I was in some engineering class in high school, and I learned like, oh, people build their own computers. And I was on Reddit, the Build a PC Reddit for like 6 months, just soaking up everything. And eventually I was answering some of the cookie cutter questions that people would ask like every day. And at that point, I was like, well, why answer the same exact question 10 times when I could just make a video and answer it once? And that's where it started. And at that stage, like I still remember like my fourth or fifth video, like I was addressing the like 18 subscribers I had as like, hey
Yeah.
guys, like I know you're wondering if I'm here. And like, so it was, it was slow. I always watch YouTube. So like I certainly wanted to be a YouTuber. But like the tech really just came out of nowhere. And then I started with PCs and I slowly kind of picked up on who's doing what in the tech scene. And the
Yeah.
whole YouTube game is a balance between follow trends, but also differentiate yourself. Like that's how the algorithm works. And I definitely at the beginning was very trend following. And then eventually over time was like, okay, I need to not just copy everything.
Yeah. And was there a point with where you felt like momentum picking up? And
I learned what clickbait is.
yeah, that's
The
something I'm
first
trying to
big
learn
video
now.
I had was like 10 or 12 videos in like a month or two. And I was still doing PCs at the time. And for context, I wasn't building the computers. I was
Yeah.
talking about like, you got $1,000. These are the parts you should buy. And
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
thumbnail, I would put an image of a computer, but even those would get some views. But I learned what virality meant when I was like, well, what if the tool is pcpartpicker.com. You can like pick all the parts. I was like, well, what if I just got the most expensive things, got the best of everything? So I did that. And I made a video called like best gaming PC for $30,000 or something. I forget the exact number. And on the thumbnail, it was a beautiful, super high end gaming computer. And I didn't build it, but nobody clicking on the video knew that. So it blew up. It obviously got a lot of dislikes. That I also learned that dislikes don't really matter.
Yeah.
And then that was the first like kind of explosion in like my growth chart on YouTube. And I kind of started the trend of like the whole 5 or 6 year YouTube journey I had was, a month of average performing videos, viral video, a month or two of average performing videos, viral video. And it was just, that taught me.
Because I know there's a lot of people, like even especially myself, kind of like even when I first started the podcast, like people want instant gratification. I think it's really hard to see the long-term goal. Is there something that like helped you with that? Because I know a lot of people focus on their statistics and saying like, oh shit, this video is only getting like 100 views versus another one getting like 1,000. So is there anything that helped you like not focus on the stats so much?
No, honestly, like the concept is like, okay, I know what is necessary, a prerequisite for a viral video. Good thumbnail, good title, hot topic within a trend. But there's no quantifiable way to say this video will go viral.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of...
You just have to follow like the same formula like over and over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes it would take 6 months and I wouldn't have a viral video in 6 months. I'd be like, shit, what am I doing wrong? Like my numbers are going down, even though they're not really. It's just I haven't had a viral video. And I don't know. At that point, I messed around with like giveaways. That was pretty early in the YouTube days where giveaways weren't as schemy, I guess. And those were a good growth mechanism. But really, it was just like, okay, how do I get another viral video?
Okay. And then how were you able to like discover your niche too? Because I know there's I've just been researching YouTube a lot. People say not to have like 2 different topics on one channel to like really hone in on one thing. Like, are you a believer in that, or do you think that like people can pave their own path? I guess like see what kind of picks up.
That's an interesting question. I don't know the best way to answer that.
Yeah.
I definitely generally focused on one thing, but one thing at a time.
Okay.
Like I started with computers. I think next was Android phones. Then I have mechanical keyboards were huge for a very long time. And like setups in general, like gaming setups. I definitely didn't necessarily only do that one, but it would be like the predominant theme of the channel at any given time. But like even the different things I'd be trying, like I might be doing mechanical keyboard videos and setup videos at the same time. Even those are related and kind of under the same umbrella. So it wasn't a far stretch.
Was there a huge learning curve too? Because obviously you said it took you some time to like figure out thumbnails. You probably learned a lot about like Adobe Premiere, or Adobe Photoshop. I just feel like there's a lot of like stuff to learn along the way, and it can sometimes be frustrating if you just can't like do it.
Yeah, no, there's certainly a big learning curve, but like especially on the production side.
Yeah.
I found the learning curve harder. The harder learning curve was like understanding, like, it's a cliche, but like, who am I, or like what do I want my channel to represent? Because the
Yeah.
production side, in the end, you could get as many views with an iPhone as with a $30,000 production setup, and like to some degree, it's about the content and production on top of that's a icing on the cake, but the cake is what matters. So I was never, I never really pushed the boundaries of what's possible. I was usually, if I learned new things with image or video editing, it'd usually be from another tech creator that like actually learned it from like an Adobe tutorial or something.
So you think like people really can't tell the difference between a bunch of the equipment and stuff?
They can tell, it just doesn't matter. Like it might make them stick around more. It optimizes, sure. Like your video might do 10% better with better production, but
Okay.
the baseline of how that affects is completely, like there's really just a minimum bar of production you need.
Okay.
Past that, it's not like, oh, I need him to have a $10,000 camera instead of a $5,000 camera. There's very diminishing returns at that point.
People think that they need like an expensive camera to grow a big channel.
Yeah, no, definitely not. You'd be fine with an iPhone if you have a $500-$600 DSLR. You don't need an upgrade until you're pulling in tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Okay. And then at what point were you like able to monetize yourself? Like how deep in the channel?
I gotta say, probably around 10,000 subscribers is when I started doing like YouTube ads. Those were like tech especially has terrible CPM, so it wasn't much money. 10 to 100,000 subscribers, I probably did some sponsorships in there. The YouTube ad rates were still low, but I was getting enough views where it added up. But the biggest change was, and I waited way too long to do this, was around 100,000 subscribers. I did Amazon affiliate stuff, like their affiliate program, learning that like all my videos were product based anyway. And then learning that, oh, I can get commissions off the links in my description. That was huge. That ended up being like 2/3, 3/4 of my revenue.
Oh, wow.
Still to this day, the passive income, it's the majority. But with that, it's a double-edged sword. It certainly influenced the content I would choose to make, because obviously I knew the more people that clicked the link, the more money I'd get.
And then you talked a little bit about the YouTube algorithm. I know there's like a lot of myths out there that are saying like, oh, your video should be like at least 10 minutes long. Do you think any of that like holds true, or what have you found in your videos being consistent, like kind of over time?
Yeah, it's so I don't pay as close attention anymore. And obviously that stuff's changing all the time.
Yeah.
The last I knew of, the length of your videos, the consistency of the length matters more than the actual length. Like if you're doing 30-minute videos every time, that's the equivalent of doing 5-minute videos every time. And then like that plays a factor in like, well, if your viewers are watching 30-minute videos from you, then another person that makes 30-minute videos, you're going to get recommended there. So it's like, it's more about being consistent to some degree. And I think I learned that part in the context of podcasting, because you obviously have full length episodes and clips. And that's why they'll separate the channels, is because they want the main channel just have full length, be consistent, and then the other channel be clips, and then they'll get their suggestions will be all clips.
Such an opportunity cost with all this stuff. Like I'm right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to use my time on and not waste my time.
Yeah. I mean, that rings true for YouTube, especially in general. Like what gets somebody to click your video, which is the whole objective of YouTube, is the thumbnail and the title, nothing else.
Okay.
And like you have a video, you might have spent 10 hours on a video, but the video doesn't get them to click. It might make them like it. It might make them watch longer, increase their attention, sure. But if the goal is to get them to click, you should be spending 1 hour on the video and 5 on the thumbnail and title.
Okay.
Not actually that.
Yeah.
But,
no, and there's like a point I feel like too. I don't know if you've had like a similar experience, but when you're editing, you try to be like perfect. And, you don't know when to let it go.
If you never put out what you have, you'll never put anything out, and you won't necessarily make the right improvements. But if you put it out before it's ready, then maybe you're also shooting yourself in the foot.
You were saying like YouTube could be like a 24/7 job.
I think back to it sometimes. I'm like, why? How did I? Like, I can't imagine coming home, doing homework, and then being like, let me make a YouTube video. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even really. I automated to some degree. Like, I brought Byron on. He edited and then did a bunch of just and that helped, like getting rid of the you know monotonous stuff helped, but it it's a trick because like you also, if you outsource editing, then editing is a part of your creative footprint on a video.
I love,
So
yeah, it's my favorite part. I think the process is pretty fun. Just like when you like have like a little small meme edit or bring another video in, it's just like,
yeah, I think I think not doing that, stopping that like a couple years in, was probably a large factor in why I eventually stopped. Because when you lose touch with the process, you lose, like, it's no longer a creative thing. It's a job.
Okay. And then you kind of consider yourself to hang up like 1 or 2 years into school. Like, what was your transition like going into college?
I was itching to stop.
Okay.
I was very formulaic at that point, so I could knock out 2 or 3 videos a week with 4 or 5 hours of work. I had somebody edit, and then like it was all remote and Google Drive and stuff. But even then, like, I was itching to stop. I knew I didn't enjoy the video creating process. Like, it was something I had to do. I didn't look forward to it. At some point I despised having to set up the lights and tripods. And the only thing I would enjoy over an hour of making the video was like the 10 minutes of recording, and then everything else I hated. So I was itching to stop. I tried outsourcing the video production to smaller tech creators, having them like hosts on the channel. Cause ultimately I knew I couldn't sell it if it was only attached to my face. Cause the whole point is I didn't want it attached to my face.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't really work. And then at that point it was like, all right, I know I want to get out of here, but it's a very sustainable, profitable business. I can't just stop with no other plan.
Yeah.
And then Vade came along, and super risky, everything like that. But at least it was, it had the potential to be a better use of my time, and to be, like profitable. So I was waiting for something to really take my pursuit and effort away. And when Vade came around, I definitely did it. I jumped into it and probably did it far before I should have, but I like risk. So at that point I was like, all right, I should put all my time into this.
And then also when you were like leaving MS Tech behind you, did you ever like think to yourself, or like had a lot of people ask you like, why in the world would you walk away with over like 500,000 subscribers? Or did that question ever like pop in your head at all?
Totally. And I still get tweets and emails being like, are you ever coming back? And I still have a voice. I have opinions. I like to share those. I didn't like the format. I would only ever go back if I was confident that it wouldn't turn out the same way. I wouldn't grow to not like it.
Okay.
I still don't, might be YouTube, it might be a different thing eventually, but it was kind of like YouTube. With YouTube, I'm not unattractive. I can speak well. And I knew how to make videos, and I knew tech, and those are all privileges, and those contributed very largely to my success. You can never get a stat of like 50% of my success is because I'm a, decently attractive white male. Like, you can't break it down like that, but they played a part. And I wanted to prove that I could create value, not being in front of the camera, literally and metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
So like with Vade, if we are the extreme success, like if we hit the extreme success, that's a small percent chance, nobody will ever hear of us. We're very behind the scenes data stuff. And like,
I see
that's like it's the chip on the shoulder of like, all right, I want to prove that I can create value without being in front of the camera. Let me go do a completely behind the scenes thing in one of the hardest industries to do anything in. And then the idea was like, all right, after I do that, then maybe I'll come back. Or like, I didn't want to.
And then transitioning out of YouTube, what would you say are like some important lessons / skills you've learned, or what were the big takeaways from building that subscriber base?
It's a good question. I certainly got a hands-on experience of compounding returns, of exponential growth. It doesn't seem like it seems slow until it's not. And then it happens all at once. And one day when I'm wake up and there's 200,000 subscribers, I was like, oh, wow, somewhat inside of me, it still feels like there's 10,000 because the numbers stop meaning anything. Like when you see a video with 50,000 views, you no longer think like in the context of like, oh, my videos normally get 100 views, 50,000 is a ton. Like it starts, what matters at that point is like how it compares to the views a month ago. So you do lose kind of touch of the scale, but it's also like when you take a step back, you realize that if you do something for 5 years consistently, you're going to get somewhere.
I think that whole consistency is huge because like I was saying before, people want instant gratification. And even now I'm seeing like my numbers climb, but at the same time, I'm like 24 subscribers on YouTube. But like what happens with 5 years of consistency, like who knows? So I think that's like a pretty important takeaway. Somebody
found Joe Rogan's like tweet from a decade ago where he was like, after talking on some podcast, he was like, I kind of makes me want to start something myself. And then 12 years later, 1,000 episodes later, he gets in like multi-$100 million deal with Spotify. And it's like, all that started with was like, oh, I'm going to try something. And then we all know Joe Rogan as the biggest podcaster, but he did it for so long, not as the biggest podcaster. The other thing that I came out of YouTube with, and I don't really know the angle I want to take on this. I have like kind of been exploring like doing some sort of public speaking about it or like going to classes or something or guest speaking, but it is unique to, it's easy. Like anybody can say, oh, social media followers are bad. Don't pursue them when they don't have any. It's a very unique and uncommon scenario like mine where I had a ton of them, was growing really well, could have kept doing it, but then chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And part of I haven't really went into that largely because like, it depends how the next few things go. If it's like, oh shit, I should have kept doing it.
But you can always come back. So
yeah. And like the idea of like, I was there and it was, by the time I was there, like I stopped, I didn't want to be the face on the screen. I didn't want the constant attention. I never attached my Instagram to YouTube because I wanted a separation of person and channel. And then having the choice and making the choice to stop making videos and taking that risk, especially when you consider like the monetary opportunity cost, that's unique. And I think it could be valuable for a lot of younger people to hear that like, it's not, grass is always greener on the other side. You might get there, you might have 100,000 followers, but at what cost? And are you going to be happy? And like that, it's at some point I might explore that further, but it's definitely like, I think about it a lot of like, I'm glad I made that choice, regardless of how the next 3 things go. Like, I don't regret making that choice. And I was very aware of the risks and opportunities I was giving up by stopping and making that choice. I feel that it makes like me I don't know the right adjective, but like a more genuine or like disciplined person. Like I'm proud of it, I guess, like making the choice, not going back on it or anything like that. But I don't know. I'm not really sure where it's going, but there's something there.
Parking, what advice would you give to someone about to start a channel?
Only do it if you like doing it. And if you're doing it just to build a following of views, you're not going to like it. You're not going to succeed, one, but then you're not going to like it when you get it. You're always going to want more. And if at any point you stop liking it, either go to like shift to something you do like making or stop. Like it is very, you have to enjoy what you're doing. The audience can see it. You can see it. In my case, when I realized I did not enjoy what I was doing, I stopped. But there are many people that realize they don't like what they're doing. And over time, it takes a toll on them as a person because they're putting on an act. They're not genuine. They make mistakes. They're playing a game, and it's a very toxic like place to be in that. So it's cliche as fuck, but like do it if you love it and only do it and keep doing it if you're still loving it.
Mm-hmm. Some good advice. I'm taking that in myself.
Like the number, like I'm telling you, like when you're looking at 100 views and 5 years from now, 100,000 views, the feeling you get will be no different. It's not like, oh my God, this is so like, it is all about, relative to what you're used to.
Okay.
And the number will not give you any sense of gratification or satisfaction or fulfillment. The only place that's coming from is making the content itself and like having that platform and like doing that in the creative side, and like even the money on top of the views, like sure, that's cool, but it is not what's going to drive you to keep going further. Hold on, I got to turn this light back on.
Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to not focus on the numbers.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy to say, you know, having that channel that like, oh, the views don't matter, but like obviously you're measuring the numbers. Like there's no avoiding that. It's just like it's important to see that when the numbers go up, they also bring bad things. And you know, there's simple stuff like hate, but then there's the complicated stuff like you can't say anything. When you have the attention, you have the attention, and everything you say is being watched and scrutinized. And even outside of what you say, anything you do is being attached to your public persona. And like my nightmare scenario was if I, was at a party and did something stupid and got arrested, like it wouldn't read college student. Like if I was just college student, no, there'd be no headline. But if I was a YouTuber, it would say YouTuber gets arrested at a college party. And like there is a negative side to having the limelight on you. And it's easy to say that, it's a natural, like when you see people like get really popular and then have a massive public mistake and apology, like that's them learning that hands-on. And unfortunately, we live in a world where if you have a huge mistake and then you apologize for it, that just helps your numbers. And that's where you see people really go off the deep end of like their sanity.